Welcome back to episode 2 of Agentic Era. I'm your co-host Isaac, and with me I have my co-host Ken, and we are talking about the latest and greatest happenings in AI from a software and hardware perspective. And today, what we're gonna kick off is a bunch of topics from what we've seen in the last few weeks. But to kick us off, Ken, man, how's the week been? What's going on?
All right. First, I'll jump out there and say for anyone watching, if you're a software engineer or product manager, whatever it is, if you have questions, comments, toss them in the chat, toss them in the comments. We'll definitely be monitoring that. This is for the community, so definitely want to keep that going. For me, one of the bigger things you probably saw, Gemma 4 got released. And so I was pretty excited about it. One is I'm really big on open source models. I'll probably do a video on this, on how I brought it into the mobile app. But basically, they have different tier models and different parameters, different sizes. And first off, I've been using the GPT, or I should say OpenAI's open source model, GPT OSS. 20 billion parameters. It works well on my device. However, again, it's been around for quite a bit. So we're talking about like training data wise, just on basic training data, not after I add all the extra context and stuff. So Gemma 4 is more recent, but also they had, along with that model, they also have it's a 4 billion parameter model, but it fits on a phone. So I actually did a prototype where I created it, put up an iOS simulator, went through, added llama.cpp. There's some layering that had to go on top of it. Download the model to the device, and it runs smoothly. I went into test flight just to see, okay, how's it on the device? It ran even faster. So man, I was pretty excited about that, just because of the capabilities that's going to unlock when you think about running AI locally on your device. Yeah, there's the privacy and all that kind of things, but what can you unlock from a feature perspective on your mobile workflow or within your app? Things that you can do directly on the user's device. That's gonna no latency, no worry about token costs, that kind of thing. I got really excited about that. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to see where that goes.
That's crazy. So the setup on that for an iOS, did Google provide any like SDKs or things like that to integrate their model, or would you go
So
about to get that set up?
they have some proprietary ones. However, so for Androids, absolutely, you already know. But for iOS, I think there was some offerings, but you had to sign for an account, do all this different stuff. And I didn't really want to go that route just on the proof of concept phase. So I basically was using some standard stuff. Right now they have a Llama, it's called a standard Llama or something like that, where one of the Swift packages, you can download that into your Xcode project. You can use that. I still needed to update some things just based on where we're seeing some of the prefixes and tags, right? The model throws out is a little bit different than what it was
Mhm.
expecting. So I had to update some of that stuff. So I added a wrapper around it, but the basic fundamentals were there. So I didn't
Yeah.
have to roll everything from scratch and integrating with Llama CPP on the mobile device. So there was a lot
Okay.
of good stuff already baked in.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. It makes me think, what are the chances Apple will even allow model-based apps to exist? You almost need the jailbreak community to come back to to even deploy apps like that. Otherwise, you're just stuck in that test flight phase. If you do create a legit app, I'm sure they're not going to approve that.
That, or you have to sign your life away on the privacy policy and like all the other stuff you have to do to get around it. I actually want to get out there and see what I can push forward anyways. The key
Yeah.
though is you can set it up. The most efficient thing to do is to download the model when the user's actually in the app, right? And I think Google AI Edge browser, or Gallery, I think it's called. Actually, that's an app you can download today, and you can download the models directly to your device as well, right? The key is, since it keeps the package size light, because the model itself is like 3.1 gigs, I think. So you don't want to download that. Like the user can be downloading down the App Store forever. I experienced that firsthand because I actually bundled it as a part of the package first.
Okay.
But that being
Yeah, we'll
said,
definitely have to add that to the show notes. Hit the
yeah,
likes, guys. We're,
I'll
we're
toss that
providing
in
you all
there.
the resources here.
I'll toss it in there. But the thing is, since you're not downloading the model directly in this part of the package, I don't know how much they're going to actually be directly injecting policies and flagging different things within the app just right
Mhm.
away. Because it really is Llama CPP. I mean, that package has been around forever. So unless they blacklisted that package, you're probably going to be all right. Now, depending on
Yeah.
what you're using it for, yeah, okay, then there's that. But I think they'll allow, at least at a surface level, the whole downloading and usage will be fine. But use cases could get a little bit stringent. They might add some
Yeah.
different things you have to add as part of your plist file tagging or something.
Yeah, because usually your average app, you download the app and then you're going to hit like a backend service. But in this case, you're looking to load that local LLM on their device over
Yeah,
the long term. It's super cool. Like the fact that we're even talking about running local LLMs on our mobile device shows
yeah,
how far we've come, both from just a hardware perspective, but more importantly, the way these LLMs are shrinking down. For the longest time, it's always been like, man, we have these like powerful phones. All we can really do is go on Instagram. People talk about how your phone is 100 times more powerful than it took for us to go to the moon. But now
yeah.
it's okay, I actually see a use case here, like being
Seeing
able
the fruit.
to
Yeah.
load a local LLM on your phone to do a number of things. Let's imagine probably easier on Android, but you're able to get the LLM outside of the app and maybe it can control your phone, things like that. Basically, an open cloth for your mobile device.
Ooh,
Um,
yeah.
Not something you would install on your personal device you
I
use
was
every
gonna
day,
say
but to still have something in your
jailbreak.
pocket like that, I can see
Oh
a
man.
number of use cases for that.
Here's where I'm gonna draw the line. You know how when your app wants to use your photos, use your microphone, camera, whatever, and you get that little prompt. If they make us have a prompt to show, hey, this app uses direct local AI, and why do you have to put like why do you want to use it, all that stuff. If they start doing that, man, I'm gonna be like, come on, man, that's not gonna happen on the Android phones. It's gonna be way more fluid because that always opens the door for more scrutiny. But
Yeah.
yeah, man. But aside from that,
Yeah,
man, how's your week, man? What are you getting into? What's going on?
man. Yeah, for me, like the week has been really focused on a number of projects,
Okay.
but really about my organization of these projects. What I'm
Mm,
noticing now
okay.
is
Okay.
you're running 2 to 3 agents at a time in multiple workspaces, completely different contexts. And a lot of it is as you're switching tasks, are the agents able to reference each other's details? Do you
Okay.
have to
Okay.
reprompt every time you start a new session? And then for my own well-being, like the ability to have a knowledge base of things that have happened, right? Like change logs that get
Yeah.
reported out or key architectural decisions that I've made while working with the agents that I need to relay back up to the team or just spread across different agents. And so the workflow that I've been working on is we talked about this offline like last week or whatever too, where was using Obsidian to work with a project I have where the
Mm,
documentation was on Obsidian and the MCP was interacting with the agent from Cursor.
yeah. Okay.
Flash forward now, it's more of a streamlined thing. There's actually been an uptick in Obsidian, and the community now has created some additional skills that are
Yeah.
actually like really cool. It's well beyond my initial setup. So now you can set it up in such a way that whether you're working with Claude or Cursor or your local
Mm,
LLM, they all can reference the same Obsidian knowledge base.
yeah.
You can set it up where each agent can write to an agents directory, and then
Okay.
maybe on cron, however you want to do it, you could have an agent like update all the agents and give you a summary of what's going
Ah.
on.
Okay.
And then you
Okay.
still have your own space for your own notes.
Yeah.
It's been huge, to be honest, because right now there's things you want to create into permanent documentation, things you don't care about. But
Yeah.
then we talk about the feedback loop in learning as you're dealing with agents. Sometimes they come up with
Yeah.
some really interesting solves that you want to
Yeah.
document and use elsewhere and add to your own personal toolbox.
For sure. For sure.
So Obsidian is kind of opening that up to allow me to continue to build like a knowledge base across all agents.
Nice. With that being said, though, what do you envision? Because if you're working on a team, there's going to be some of the notes you're going to take. You've seen the repos, right? Where there's a docs folder. Right under that is a features folder, and it has all these features, specs that are probably outdated, right, and all that sort of stuff. How do you feel like because Obsidian ultimately it can pull your local, right? But if you clone a repo, you have that locally for you. How do you feel about like that, sharing that with the team? Like, how do you get the team involved in that? If it were to be, if your stuff is, yeah, personal stuff in there, you might want to keep that out. Or like, what do you might have actual product stuff that's actually going to be helpful, but also for another project. Like, how do you feel like that's going to manage as far as long term and what are you looking at for that?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. I think for me, with the way I have it, like right now, I do save some docs in repositories
Okay.
in the required directory.
Okay.
If you have a monorepo and you have multiple apps, you have infrastructure folders, all this kind of stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
I try to save them in that child directory rather than at
Mm.
the root of the repo.
Okay.
One cool thing you can do as well is put agent.md files in the individual folders
Yep.
and then use the base parent directory to help the agent route to where it needs.
Yep. Okay.
So then when it gets to these child
Yeah.
folders, it's okay, I should assume this persona and start doing that. And what I've found is the documentation stuff gets iffy. I think it comes back to the old developer debate of code is
Mm.
documentation. We don't need documentation. But now it's flipped on its head because you want to
Yeah.
give the agents enough context. And I would rather have that context be in a file in most cases than
Yeah.
all of these comments in the code where it gets hard to read.
Yeah.
From that perspective, I've been saving what I found to be important, but I don't save every single plan, things like
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Although I have heard maybe it's good to save all the plans, right?
Yeah.
But
Depends on your
but
context window.
yeah. I'm not on that side either. I guess we'll see, but it's to the point now where Obsidian feels personal, but I do feel that it would make sense to have a documentation repo
Okay.
if
Like
you want to
centralized.
separate it from your application code
Okay.
and let
Okay.
your agents riff on that because they have GitHub
Uh,
CLI and everything.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
personal stuff, I wouldn't want to upload that. So I wouldn't just want to
Yeah.
take my whole Obsidian and put it in Git.
Yeah.
But I do think there's an advantage to using Git because Markdown, the agents understand, the developers understand,
Mm.
and it would make something like Confluence obsolete.
Okay.
And you could just do everything in Git at that point and then have your skills remind your agents to go update documentation so they never become
Mm.
stale.
Man, and I wonder too, because the problem that's faced, because it'd be really clean to have that centralized document repository, and that could be for your business per se, your organization, and that'd be nice to have just from this is how our standards practices, this is how we feel about certain things, this is our culturally, this is what we stay away from when it comes to developing or like your standard practices, best practices, all that good stuff. But then there's those specific repo sort of things, right? Where if you're building a VS Code extension, you're gonna have different things in knowledge base as opposed to something that's more of an API
Mm.
versus repo just for UI or whatever. And then there's the mono repos, right, that have everything. So I feel like somebody's gonna have to create this at some point. Man,
Man, that's free game, guys.
it,
Hit the
it, it,
subscribe,
it's an
drop a
aggregator.
comment.
Uh,
If somebody
Obsidian.
goes out there and makes that, make sure
Oh
to
man,
drop a comment. We'll give you a free ad.
if they can make an Obsidian aggregator, like that can sit in GitHub as an enterprise solution because you now can pull from your centralized place, pull your current one in as well. Because you can do it now, but you got to hop between vaults and you got to do there's the orchestration needs to happen there. But if that came standardized and you could do that, man, that
Yeah.
would be amazing.
No,
Um,
yeah, it would be huge, man. I mean, just last week too, man. Karpathy dropped another bomb on us with the second brain pattern, man.
every
Like,
day. Anything
yeah,
he tweets
yeah.
now is gold. Anything he tweets goes viral. It's crazy. It's crazy, man. Well,
Yeah, yeah, what's your thoughts on the second brain thing?
I thought it was very, I want to say divisive. It was mixed reviews, right? From the developer
Well,
community.
maybe let's explain what it is real quick.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Like from my understanding of the way it was set up, where you now should give your agents an adaptable layer of knowledge, which might even be replacing your knowledge base regs in a sense.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's crazy, but yeah, what were you saying on it?
Yeah, no, and back on that topic, man, Rag, we were just talking about that, I think last episode, and we were talking about the context. But the thing about Obsidian, what's nice is it can give before we had to have documents in the cloud, and we'll say, okay, go do AI search on this whole thing, and that comes with cost, infrastructure costs, all that kind of thing, latency, whatever else. However, when you have Obsidian, it's pulling their search queries are doing it locally, right? Like it's baked in. So you can have this locally on your device. You don't have to go and search the web for it. It can crawl all the documents. And so if you think about the aid that has with a LLM, right? It can do a search because there's an Obsidian CLI. It can do a search based on certain topics, get the top 10, then go and read those because it has all the tools, Claude Code SDK, GitHub Copilot CLI SDK, whatever you have you or the actual programs themselves, the CLIs themselves, you can actually then read the files. LM can summarize them and it can do way more as opposed to, hey, I have this massive area of docs everywhere and it's got to go do, you're looking at grep and search and file read. And you start seeing all the chain of things that has to go through. It really limits that and narrows it down swiftly. I think it's funny because the level of information. So what you described, right, is as you're working with your agent, you may have discovered something of, oh man, I was approaching it this way. This is actually a better way to approach it. Or here's some stop gaps. Here's some technology that we're waiting to be released in preview, but it's not available yet. All the different things, you can have that in just your notes. People can say, hey, and take my whole entire session we just had, take all the learnings. And by learnings are the things that like I was going to approach it a certain way. The LLM let me know or inform me of a different way. I chose between three different ones, ADR style, right?
Right.
And now put all that learning into a doc, and now everyone else has that. Like you talked about this before, like with Tesla cars, right? How when they're driving and like when they discover something, a new road, they all have it now.
Right.
We're simulating that. But a lot of the community was like, dude, it's just folders. Like, hey, he just put folders and files in there. And I'm like, they missed the whole boat. Everyone's like, yeah, I can just organize my stuff like that. And I'm like, that's not really because again, you want to structure that the LLMs can quickly crawl through as well. Some things that make sense. But it's so much more than that. When you actually put something like an Obsidian on top of it, the search capabilities, the version capabilities, the all the different things you have available to you, and the knowledge graph, right? Obsidian has a knowledge graph, and so
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can go dive in and say, "Hey, I learned this thing about RAG." You go into that node, you can see, oh, here's a tweet that's related to it. Here's an Instagram post that's related to it. Or obviously, if you're doing more personal engagement stuff, but if not, hey, this is a system that leverages RAG that we use as an example. Here's an example repo. I can go pull the snippets. You're like, there's all sort of things that Obsidian gives you out the bat. Of course, you want to have folders that organize it well, but I feel like it was a little bit downplayed. And the last thing I'll say about this is this opens a door. So there's a little bit of this is another future concept, man. It's one of those things where you know how we're having when you mentioned it before, going from agent to agent, you're starting over. You're like, hey,
Hmm.
load this in my context, do all this, do all that, and scrape this repo, read these docs. Someone's going to create a way, and again, we have these mini models, nano models that are distilled, but they're very quick and they're very smart on verticals. If you give it information, it can really decisively go between verticals really within that vertical really well. What's it to say if you were to privatize your Obsidian repository and you put a distilled model on top of it? What's to say you now have replaced in a whole vertical per se? Hey, accounting, right? I have a whole knowledge base of accounting, and
Hmm.
now I can plug my any agent model into it, and now I have a way to give them all that same knowledge swiftly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you think about do you build skills around it and all the other stuff. We'll get into how they're already doing the managed agent infrastructure these days, but we'll get into that. But I'm like, man, that could actually I'm selling an agent that does this. My knowledge base, my domain knowledge is all wrapped up in this big sort of source repo that can Obsidian or another tool can sit on top of it. And it's sharing that context, even though I plug and play models out, top agents, sub agents, whatever.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that would actually be crazy because yeah, then whoever it is has all of those details forever, right? Have you tried like exporting your chats from Cursor or Claude?
I have not. I have not. I saw they made it easy to go from was it ChatGPT into Claude. whenever they had that government debacle.
Oh, yeah.
Remember?
From the Cloud Code perspective, like if you could, sometimes you have some like crazy threads, and then
Mhm.
all of a sudden you're done with that agent, so you switch, and or the context got filled up or whatever, so you switch. But yeah, just to download that, move it into something like Obsidian, and then now that next agent has all of that. It's not a
Yeah,
summarized understanding, it's like the full
for sure.
context.
For sure. And honestly, people can roll their own today, right? So you can create a skill in Claude Code that says, hey, every time I use end of session, this skill basically says it describes on how to summarize it or how to gather all the details and explain what's important. You're also being able to prioritize what's important to you, but you can send that out into a document every by default at the end of every session. And then now
Yeah.
you already have that, right? You can send it to a specific place in your file directory where your Obsidian is, and it just loads in. There's also a repository in that folder structure as well, all the things. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
Definitely worth the try. Like I would save off these cursor agents. I would just archive them because I'm like, okay, if I want
Yeah.
ever want to go back, but sometimes it's just been so long. But yeah, on like the context piece used to be pretty crazy. You would have the agent do one task and then you would fill the context and
Mhm.
then they say, okay, go start a new one. But ultimately now it's to the point where the summarization through Cloud Code and or Cursor has really stepped up to allow you to
Mhm.
keep using the same agent longer, not really have to throw it away.
Okay, okay. And when you're in Cursor, because I'm actually a terminal CLI guy. I haven't used Cursor as much. Usually VS Code, which I know Cursor is an extension of that. They forked the repo off of that, but usually I'm the CLI, and maybe I'm checking diffs in VS Code or something like that. But when it comes to Cursor, are you finding that like when you're starting a whole brand new experience, is it like where you left off? Are they also saving memory collectively and that kind of thing as well? Or is it really truly like fresh every time you open that same repo and cursor?
When I open a new chat in the same repo,
Yeah.
it feels fresh. But if
Okay.
I asked just a random question, it's good enough to go find where to look,
Okay.
especially with the
Okay.
introduction of the sub agents.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Now, if you ask a question, even if you're not in plan mode, you can be in full like agent mode.
Mm,
It can look at the task and say, okay, you're asking me to check this directory, this URL, and it may say, I'm going to spin up 3 subagents to go do that stuff, come back, and then give you the summary. Especially when you're using tools now, it does a really good job of splitting it up. Granted, if you try to force it, if I try to say spin up subagents to go look at this, it sometimes
yeah.
doesn't always do that. It
Ah,
determines on itself when it should
gotcha. Okay.
versus like on Claude, I've noticed the same thing. I You can upload like a bunch of files and it'll be like, okay, let me spin up n number of subagents
Yeah.
to go look at what's happening. But no, the whole like cursor Claude thing, it's almost like every time somebody comes out with something, the next day the other does. We just
Yeah.
saw Cloud Code get an update where you can do split screens and have multiple agents.
Oh man. Not
And
different
Cursor just
terminal
released
tabs,
that
but
last week
split
too.
screen.
Yeah, yeah. So you can,
Oh
in your
man.
Cloud Code, if you're using their desktop app,
Yeah.
you can have a session, work on it, and then split screen that session. So you can have two
Oh
views at
man.
once. So it's actually pretty legit. I think it
Oh
helps a lot.
man.
Because what I was doing before was, I don't know, man, like using Claude Code in the terminal is okay, but I still end up with the IDE somewhere so I can see
Ah,
the
yeah.
files easier. So I actually had a good workflow where I was using Claude Code in my VS Code extension on the left
Okay.
and then Cursor on the right with two different
Ah,
workflows in the
huh.
same IDE across multiple workspaces.
Okay. Okay.
So then
Okay.
it's still one window. I'm not like,
Hmm.
okay, where's
Okay.
this tab? Where's that tab? Like I can see them both and
Yeah. Yeah.
keep eyes on it. So that was like a new workflow that I picked up the last couple weeks too, and that's been pretty legit.
Nice. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I feel like the whole sub agent thing, especially, man. Now the GitHub Copilot CLI released a thing called Fleet, where like you can say release a fleet of agents to go work on whatever. They're still deciding on their own who, when to spin them up and what have you. If you don't actually specify, same thing with Claude. But I find that really, it's just interesting to see. I wonder, even from a token compute usage standpoint, are there any things that we'll look back later and be like, you know what, that burned a lot of tokens. I probably could have prompted that a little different to not activate the fleet and not do
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But
A lot of areas like that, man. Everything's in R&D mode right
yeah,
now, so it's burn the
technical
tokens.
preview.
Like but yeah, ultimately, if you think about it, all of that ability to spin up cloud agents
Yeah,
just to go check unit tests or whatever, it is
yeah,
super
yeah,
cool though. Like the
mm,
fact that I can tell an agent to go in the cloud and do something, and then it will
yeah,
come back, send me a video of what it did, open the PR, and then just be
yeah,
like, all right, this is ready to merge in. Gives you a little bit more confidence as a developer. But
for sure.
the side that's pretty interesting is like if you have these cloud agents, they're in their isolated boxes, but they still can't
Mm,
talk to each other. You
yeah,
you need
yeah,
a okay, so you have like your harness, right? Your harness video.
yep,
You can spin up all these agents in there, but then we
hmm,
still need that communication piece to have the agents talk to the agents in their own containers. And
yeah.
now you have that swarm concept, which, man, like, yeah, the agent piece is really exciting to me. I feel like it's being underplayed. Like, people are just
Yeah,
looking at it as a way to break up tasks, but it almost gives you parallel async work compute across anything, services, tasks, event
for
driven
sure.
stuff. Like, yeah, I think spending more time on what you can do with agents is going to be
Yeah.
like some eye opening situations would actually happen.
Yeah, I feel like we're gonna see a flow of agent to agent protocol start to come out now because if you notice, you saw Claude released Claude managed agents, right? And if you think about it, they have their own infrastructure now. And so you can literally they're providing the container for you, the always on life cycle loop that Open Claude gives you. You can pre-bake your own set of skills and that sort of thing. That opens the door for so much. Hey man, just let me know. I'll get my software engineering agent over to you, or it's pre-baked. So you can even probably start selling agents at a high clip on that level if you think about it like that, right? Where granting people access. This goes back to our claims discussion from episode 1. But I think from that perspective, we're going to start seeing the agents have to talk to each other, right? So
Yeah.
I saw in GitHub Copilot CLI, they had this thing called the rubber duck, right? Where you can, Opus 4.6 can write up a feature for you, but then it will say, okay, Codex 5.4 is going to confer with that and say, hey, you know what? I don't really think that was good. And then blah, blah, blah. And you've probably seen this too, where if you do a PR and you say, maybe Opus created it and you would ask Codex like, hey, what do you think about, can you check the diffs in this PR and then whatever else? Or if you haven't, the cloud agent will create the PR comments. Then you'll ask Opus, hey, what do you think? Are there any of these I should address? And I like doing code review skills that categorize high, medium, and low. So I always get to go focus on the high first. And I'll go ask. And then sometimes they'll be, yeah, this is completely irrelevant because it wasn't taking this into consideration. It's just funny listening to that talk. So see, Girl Copilot CLI released rubber duck mode where now it's like they have to talk to each other to confer over a feature. And they've always had this. So you could potentially ask it and say, hey, I want Opus, Sonnet, and Codex to go talk about this feature and how I should break it down, or this code review, whatever. And I want you to give me a summary of the synopsis of what they talk about. And so an orchestration agent then kicks all those off, and then you see them talking because you can watch the thinking, and then it comes back with a summary for you and all that kind of stuff. So they've streamlined that with the rubber duck mode.
Yeah.
But think about that concept though, because now, what if you have a legal team? Like you might have your lead attorney, you might have your copywriter, you might have your person that's specifically a SME in a specific industry that can give you the legal information about that. It's like you'd want them to talk to each other. I wouldn't want to
Right.
go to each one, deliver the information, come back, deliver it, come back, that kind of thing. So they're going to need to talk to each other. And so from that instance, I think we're going to see a lot more. I dwell in the .NET area, right? So I see in agent framework, we already have agent to agent protocol. sitting there ready. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that, which is going to also introduce a lot more security concerns and the whole gaming of that stuff. But I think we're going to
Yeah.
see a lot more agent to agent protocol coming up.
Yeah, yeah. No, you bring up a good point because it's like the way the agents should be set up are the way our workforces are set up, right? Where
Yeah.
you do have the supervisor, the orchestrator, and your sub agents could be a team of engineers
Mhm.
plus a PM plus a
Yeah.
QA. Like they do need to interact to come up with the complete feature.
For sure.
I think you saw this was like Cursor a little bit ago, right? They're trying to have their agents build a browser with only their agents talking to each other. And I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure the first time it like completely failed. Second time they came out, they said it worked and all this kind of stuff. But
Okay. Okay.
ultimately, the bigger picture was that they were testing how agents can communicate. I don't know if they were using A2A protocol, but even that aside, you could do that with an event bridge, right? Have
Oh, for
every
sure.
agent post an event on the topic bus. Whoever needs to listen and pick it
For
up, picks it
sure.
up, does their
Yep.
work.
Hmm.
So the way of doing that in the cloud is there. If you can think of every serverless function as its own agent that may get work or tasks. But then now from a developer perspective, we have to bring that into our service level too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you say every microservice is its own agent or a number of agents that can take in a request and chop it up and decide which tools to go call?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, the possibilities are endless. Like we do have to rethink a lot of our architectural patterns. I fully agree that right now the architectural patterns are sound and you can still apply agents to them. But
Mhm.
you can get crazy. I don't know if you would take this to production, but imagine a monolith service that the endpoint was an agent that it can decide which tools to go call for you. So now this
Yeah.
isn't like REST API was built to be deterministic,
Yeah.
one input, one output. This would be like a GraphQL setup where like
Mm.
you send the input, you send your prompt, agents are like, okay, I need this tool, go grab everything. Here you go.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
it's crazy to think about, but you technically should be considering how you can put agents into your application, not just building with agents.
For sure. And to be honest, man, you trigger me with that monolith standpoint because I'm like, man, look, because you done this before. Is you? I think you were developing a tool, and it was like more of a finance feature thing, and I think you were dealing with the fact that when you added too many tools into context, it gave more essence or more ability to for hallucinations because we're not seeing hallucinations at a high clip like we used to. The
Right.
models are getting really good. If you're keeping your context under control, your compaction's going to keep that. I mean, you're giving it a smaller tool set. It's still not deterministic, but it's getting close to pretty deterministic almost. If you say your evals up, but the thing is, when you look at that, it's the same. We got to follow the same principles, right? Because if you have a monolithic API endpoint, you're getting at all these endpoints. At some point, that's going to get confusing for the agent and the routing and all the other stuff. And I'll be honest, man, I don't even think we'll be writing APIs. Hot take. We're going to be writing all MCP servers to start, just for now. Like, I don't know what's after that, but MCP servers to start off with for sure is because they'll own their own domain. They'll have their own set of tools. You can have an agent that is specialized in that set of tools so that it's very reproducible on the results you're looking for. And at that point, now you're plugging it into an orchestration agent and you're just routing. So maybe your API is just an agent that has a set of tools that knows it has available, but it's basic. The tool is actually the agent. And the
Yeah.
agent that it goes to calls out to the MCP and does that thing. So you now separated the concerns in that way. So I think the same software principles are going to apply. Separation of concerns, single responsibility principle. I think we're going to really start seeing that kind of stuff just play out in the architecture at a more costly way, depending on how
Yeah.
people are flowing with it.
Yeah. No, it's you think about how compute workloads are scaled in the cloud. Who's to say AWS isn't doing auto scaling based off of some agent, right? There's so many layers of the entire technology stack where you can
Yeah.
apply agents. And I think sometimes we're just hyper focused on building these apps and things like that. But
Well,
man, yeah.
I want to pose this question to you though, man, because I'm always thinking like local first. Like I want to be able to sandbox things, dev container it or whatever, so it's reproducible for all the team members. And I like using local AI, right? Because why do I want to burn tokens if that's the actual constraint? Why do I want to burn tokens on some proof of concept stuff that may or may not be working fully out anyways, right? So I'm always thinking local first. So how would we mimic this sort of agent to agent protocol type of thing? You asked me about Kubernetes earlier and stuff, and I thought about this for a second. I was like, man, pods. Okay, that might be the thing. So, what do you think is like for the local standpoint of being able to set something up locally and then be able to reproduce that in the cloud later, but be able to like do your proof of concepts and testing locally? What do you feel about that? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, hit the likes, subscribe, comment below what your thoughts are. No, but
We're hitting all the topics.
we do have services that exist today. You have LangChain and LangGraph, Crew
Okay.
AI, things where developers can programmatically control how the agents are spun up. I would say, though, to me, there may be a benefit to having another set of tool that may be more infrastructure related. Think about if you could do more Terraform workloads with your
Okay.
agents at a level like that. It would require you to maybe roll the SDK, the existing SDKs into your infra. But
Okay.
yeah, I feel like for something like LangGraph, if you were to install that, you can expose it at a service level, have the data come in, have the payload come in, you validate it with one
Mhm.
agent, then the next agent takes it, maybe goes write something to the database. So anything you can do with a parallel async call, you
Yeah.
should be able to do
Yeah.
with an agent. I think it comes down to the compute. If you if you'd happen to write a bug that recursively created age subagents,
Oh. Oh
eventually
no.
eventually your compute's
Oh,
just gonna be shattered. Like you're gonna take down the service, or if this is local in that case, you're gonna have to power down your laptop.
oh man, you're
Um,
out. You're out.
yeah, so like that kind of stuff can definitely still happen, but I don't know where I was even going with that. But ultimately, I feel like you can control the amount of agents that get spun up. Maybe they
Yeah.
each have their own personas and they all do a certain task. And some developers would say that's the same thing as just orchestrating a call. Call your validation script, run your
Mhm.
regex, call your database. Once that call's done, you're writing it to a log file, whatever. The choreography piece, I feel like step one, step two, step three, step four, you have to decide if does it make sense to give it to AI or do you just write
Mhm.
natural code?
Okay.
From an
Okay.
architectural perspective, that's where my mind goes a lot of time too. It's like we're building these AI things. It's really cool to build with AI, but
Yeah.
sometimes you just want to drive manual, right? Like, like you don't need everything to be automatic. And making those decisions is where I spend a lot of my time. It's
Yeah.
we could do it this way or we could do it that way. If you do it the agentic way, what are the gains?
Yeah.
But then also you're putting agents into production.
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you able to monitor them? Do you have the evals to ensure that their outputs are correct? There's some more upfront work when you decide to go the agentic route, service level, but I think it can pay off depending on that workflow.
Yeah. And compute is a thing. I've seen people do it. If it's a research capability, something that doesn't have to be responsive like right away, you can set up middleware also with maybe not a big frontier model, but maybe it's something a little bit smaller distilled, but it's very knowledgeable about what you're trying to eval. It works just the same as like a routing in the middleware for API. Like you can expect what's coming in and it can inspect what's going out. Right.
Mhm.
So it was coming in before it hits the LLM and then also what the LLM produces. And so if you're doing like a more larger back-end services async process, like that can be also something to help strengthen the evals and that. But again, it's like you wouldn't want to do that on like your front facing like chat interface or something like that.
Right.
But back to your point though, you brought up about when to write the deterministic stuff. And honestly, man, I feel like we're in a level and a point right now where even if you did do that, it had to scale. So I think personally, like it's both, right? So if we look at CLIs right now, the beauty of CLIs is that I can write utilities and deterministic code in it, right? And it can get very good with it. Now, the key is agents use CLIs really well, right? If anyone who's used agents with GitHub Copilot or GitHub CLI or Obsidian CLI or whatever, the agents can actually navigate that very well. There's a dash dash help command that's pretty much uniform. Everyone's doing it and it can see, and you can traverse through the commands to figure out what input you need, all that good stuff, right? So there's that. So locally as a developer, I can actually create that deterministic stuff there. Now, when it comes to the agents, I can feed that to an agent via MCP because there might be even some destructive stuff I need to hide away from the agent. So the MCP stuff makes it good. If I have a CRUD operation and I don't want the I don't want the agent to actually delete. I want it to maybe soft delete and then maybe send a event out for me to actually have a human readable thing. I can determine whether I need to permanently delete this record or maybe there's more legal stuff involved. Someone has to send an email to say I approve this or whatever the case be. You've now given the CLI capabilities to the agent, but you've also restricted it on what it can actually do. So building tools around that deterministic stuff, I think is a sweet spot because
Yeah.
again, it's reproducible for you locally, for your agent. And then since it's an MCP, it can be reproducible for another agent.
Yeah, yeah.
It ports
No,
really well.
yeah, I think that ends the battle of some people say MCPs will go away, everything will just be a skill. But the reality is, will you really trust a skill if you say, please don't delete? You want it
It
locked
didn't
down
read my
server side
Markdown
in your
file.
tool. Yeah, yeah, it comes back to server side
Oh man,
validation and everything there. But yeah,
that's hilarious.
it's interesting about the large agents and the smaller agents too, because you're already seeing Claude's now telling people because the agent is so expensive, use Opus 4.6 to plan,
Oh
and
man,
then
yeah,
use
yeah.
Heyoku to run the actual implementation. I think people are just doing that because things were expensive, and now they're like saying that's a flow.
Yeah. You know what though, and this could be the same reason Perplexity is doing it. You've seen Perplexity's personal computer. I know you've probably
Yeah,
seen that, and they actually are marketing that. They're like, "Hey, we have Opus 4.6 do the orchestration. We have Sonnet do this. We have Codex do that." And they're actually like navigating it that way. Now they're hiding the token usage behind computer credits, or I think they're calling it computer credits. And that's probably smart because someone will look at that and be like, hey, you charged me for this much money, but you used this and you should have used this instead. So I had less tokens consumed and blah, blah, blah. That's a whole situation. So making computer credits is
yeah,
probably a better way to mask behind it, what's really going on. But they're doing that flow already.
yeah.
What do you see as far as on your end? Have you run into a lot of constraints? Are you hitting new walls? What are you seeing from the token utilization and all that stuff with your agent orchestration?
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. If you have your Opus do a plan, then you reinforce that plan with maybe Gemini or whatever to just make sure it looks good and it has broken out tasks. There's
Mhm.
no problem handing it to a smaller model because
Yeah.
it's focused on that one finite thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Previous to sub agents, I wouldn't have done that because what happens is the plan itself may be more context than the model you're giving it
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
and then it's
Yeah.
just gonna like break things. But
Hmm.
yeah, the hallucination, like we said, has been reduced now that there's subagents. The orchestration of those subagents are like focused on just the plan, but then the subagents are doing the work. So
Yeah.
it like eliminates a lot of that. Yeah, man. So I don't know, like the 1 million parameter Gemini sort of model. I think it's great for just dumping a ton of context into it and then maybe it spits out something. But for actual like core work for the surgical stuff that an engineer has to do on the day to day,
Mm,
having a subagent or a small language model focus on its one task is actually coming out to be a really good way to do it.
for sure. And I'm actually want to actually mess with, you notice on like the GitHub Copilots, right? How like the GPT 4.1 Nano or whatever, or they have GPT 5 Mini. You'll see these distilled models that have pretty much unlimited use, right? They're not
Yeah.
actually, if you look at the amount of tokens, or you'll see the 3x by Opus or 10x, whatever it is now, right? And you see the 1x by 5.4 for GPT. But when it comes to some of those small distilled mini models and stuff, they'll have 0x. So it's like you can just run that. So really, to that point, if you're running your plan and Opus 4.6 is using all that compute to plan out and do the research and do all the stuff, yeah, man, switch over to one of those distilled models. Don't take up any of your premium requests and
Yeah.
just let it run.
Yeah. Yeah. 6 months ago, we were putting everything in a chat GPT. It was writing the plan. Then you move that into code, and then you're trying
Yeah,
to figure out how to make the plan into code. But now it's just you could basically pick anything off the shelf. It can build the plan for the most part. You probably want to use a larger language model to do the planning though, but you
yeah,
could get away with it. So even on like local model stuff, using like open code with, I think I was using OpenAI's open source model that they added, and get that inside of open code or something like that and still get work done. It's gonna
yeah,
be
yeah.
slower. You're gonna feel like you're on dial-up sometimes, but if you walk away and come back, it's gonna work. So there's hope for these hardware machines that aren't like top-notch server grade,
Yeah.
because the local host environment is gonna only get better as these models require less and less compute. If you're doing this thing on your phone, man, like there's no reason why you can't get an
Yeah.
app built on an old laptop.
100%. And we don't have to get into it because it's a bunch of stuff. Google, they release stuff that they're using for themselves. We just happen to be privy to some of the things they release. They're like, hey, we've been using this internally. We'll bless you guys with a little something. But I know you probably saw that Turbo Quant where they're talking about how they can take down the amount of token usage, and basically the way it computes everything is 10 times faster, and it's able to leverage the context to like up to 10. It's crazy stats. We're gonna have to cover that in another episode, man.
Yeah,
They released that and everyone started going crazy. Oh no, AI is going I'm like, yeah, but that's not how Google does. They're not gonna go
yeah.
commercialize it just yet. They're gonna internally they're having a field day. I know they're going in. I know they've
Yeah,
already
that was in beta, right? I
you said
think
no?
that was in beta, right? Or did that
Yeah, I
officially?
think so.
Okay.
It was some kind of
Yeah.
technical preview,
But dude,
something.
like some
It
of
was
these
pretty.
models are crazy. Where's Mythos at? What's gonna happen with that thing, man?
Nah, Mythos can wait. Mythos can wait. Oh man, do we want to get into it? All right, look, man. So I know you probably saw the news, and people are debating whether it's hype or not. But when you hear that security veterans are literally using this tool and it's finding things that they couldn't perceive. It's finding things in tried and true old software that's been around for 16 years. It's what are we supposed to do in that scenario? Like me, am I gonna go and take Mythos now and run it against all my open source projects and make sure that when people use my package, I'm not opening a vulnerability somewhere that no one could have thought about finding? They said it's breaking browsers, and I'm like, man, it sounds like the AI apocalypse already, like from a knowledge work, like from a digital standpoint. It sounds like a digital apocalypse because putting it in the wrong hands, I'm like, are we gonna have to have licenses to actually go use this thing? I'm a certified Mythos user. The way they made it sound was crazy. Yeah, man. That's one of the things that's the only advancement I can say that. Yeah, I can wait on that. I'm good. We can take
Yeah.
our time with that one. We can
Well,
take our
yeah, I
time
mean,
with that one.
if they don't release it first, then who's next? If we're at Mythos level agents across the board, what are we gonna
Man.
do?
And it got serious the moment they announced it. They had that Project Glasswing out, right? Because they're like, hey, for like the safety of humanity, we need all these big tech companies to be on board. Start securing your stuff now. Look at these bug fixes, fix them, take care of them, whatever. And it sounds pretty serious.
Yeah.
Again, I haven't seen any of the exploits. I didn't dive into any of them. They mentioned them at a surface level, which is good for security purposes. Like we don't want people to actually know what those things are, at least not out in the open for hackers to grab. But man, I'm wondering. I'm like, is this a real thing? Is this kind of is this where we're at? Do we need to
Yeah.
run this on all of our code bases? But then again, if you're running on all your code bases, we talk about lock-in. You've mentioned this before about lock-in. It's like now we're saying like, hey, we gotta go the Anthropic route because if not, we're about to get got. So it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
what do you do? What do you do?
Yeah, no,
Oh
it
man.
is crazy too, because you are going back and forth. That's why I never subscribe to a year of cursor. It's better to go monthly because if
You don't want
somebody
to save the
builds something
10%?
better, yeah, you just jump ship, you go see who has the best what. Ultimately,
Oh
though, because
man.
you have to experiment, but
Yeah.
Anthropic has built a platform. Like, AI has an enterprise level platform, but Anthropic has really taken it up a notch. Like, they are
Man.
taking shares from both Cursor and from OpenAI and from Gemini. Like they they're building it quickly too. Like you could almost host anything on that platform at this point. So if you're a company, an
Yeah.
enterprise company, and you're like, yeah, we're just gonna put everything in Anthropic, you'd probably be successful. But then what's that vendor lock? How do you get out of that?
Where's that pricing go up? Oh, we're running out of compute. Here's the price go up. And man, OpenClaw was minding its own business. And then Dispatch came out. And I'm like, come on, man. Like this thing, it was like what, 2 weeks or a week? I can't even remember. But it's funny because we're preparing even for this episode. We're talking and I'm shooting you a text. Did you see the Anthropic routine, the Claude routines? And I'm like, you saw this in Claude Cowork, right? Because you can schedule tasks that happen regularly. And so they've already given you that, hey, this always on capability for your device, your Mac Mini or your Mac or Windows, whatever you're using, your PC, whatever you're using. It stays on, you can message it, whatever, and you can schedule things that happen regularly. Now the routines can happen at a more enterprise level. So like you
Mm.
mentioned, it's like they literally just took that and said, okay, now you can run your business with it. It's not dependent upon your computer being on and you're having connected to the internet. No, it's actual infrastructure now. So I'm just like,
Yeah.
man, trying to keep up with these guys, man, it's crazy. Like it's
Yeah.
just,
How's that? Just touching on that too, man. The mental fatigue, the engineers, context switching. At
oh
this point,
man.
you're running 2 to 3 workflows, 4 or 5 workflows at a time. Yeah. How does that feel for you personally with the mental context switching?
Oh man, that's loaded. I heard an analogy because if you take what they said about vibe coders, right? So software engineers, everyone's, oh, vibe coders can take software engineers away. No, you have a huge advantage if software, you know how to write code, if you know the principles, from cloud principles, if you know all this stuff, it gives you a tremendous advantage with AI. Because if you have no knowledge of it, what happens is you'll get 80% of the way there, and then what do you do now? It's a bug you can't fix. They get stuck, right? Whereas if you have a inner workings or know how things are supposed to flow, even at a principle standpoint, you can drive it a certain way. That same principle, if you think about it, so let's say we're all vibe coding. We're all doing this. We get about a good 80, 90, 95%. And maybe there's that 5% stuff you're actually going in and tinkering with. What happens is you realize you're actually going through and solving hard problems all day. So
Yeah.
like you're doing the hard planning, the structuring, the feature sets, you're seeing how this is gonna work, you're using your judgment, you're thinking hard on this, and then you go let the agent run with it. And then you go let another one run with it on a different side. But then you come back to the other one and it might have got stuck somewhere, it needs your input, and you're like, it's a complex problem. It's not, hey, how do I write this ternary condition? It's like, no, it's like an actual thing you need to work through, whether it be SDK upgrades or different things that are mismatched or environmental stuff. And so you're doing that all day. So like
Right.
you're solving hard problems. For when I first started doing this, operating at a high clip of working through multiple agents or whatever, I would in my morning exhausted. And I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, I'm not gonna work the rest of the day. What am I doing? And a little bit of that I had to go back and find my rhythm, find my pace. Because before you get a feature written or going, you have a concept, you do a little bit of proof of concept work, you're actually driving the feature, so you're doing the coding, some of the stuff you enjoyed. And that kind of took your brain down the vertical. Whereas now, if you're hopping all day, you kind of one have to look at it like, okay, at what point do I need to take a break and exercise my mind in a different way? How do I combine more of the same context? Can I take a feature set on 3 different products that are similar that I can group together. So there's lots of different rhythms and flows. I feel like I've come out of that tired fatigue era I was in. I was in it for a little bit there at the onslaught of everything, but I think just finding your rhythm and just using the tools and paying attention to what's going on, man. If you find yourself fatigued, we need to normalize. There's no problem with saying, hey, let me take a break for a second. Let me let my mind rest. Go for a quick 5-minute walk or whatever have you. Just, we need to normalize that just for our mental health capabilities. Because if not, you watch a video of a guy running 10 different agents and 10 different terminal tabs and think that's how we're supposed to do it. And you can just walk right into it. Nah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a bad time. It's gonna be a
Yeah.
terrible time.
Hit the lesson engineers. Hit the like down below, comment. How are you guys doing with all of the AI stuff mentally? There is a ton of context switching. It's not something that you're hearing the industry talk about, but like you said, if you're solving hard problems all day long, your brain is just like fried at the end. Like
Right.
burnout used to happen 2 times a year, some crazy releases, stuff like that. But now that
Yeah.
you're working on multiple workflows at the same time, you have to be able to context switch very rapidly. You can hit a burnout if you push too far. Yeah, for me, like I feel like you take that work you did in the morning, then you take a step back, regather your thoughts, maybe switch to documentation, or like you do, Ken, do some therapeutic manual coding.
Yeah.
Like you
Gotta do
just
it every
do
once
it.
in a while, man. Gotta.
Yeah, there's like the lighter things you can do to free yourself up and then go back. But yeah, I think the point is though, everyone's at different levels too. You may be watching us and oh, these guys are way advanced. They're working on 3, 4 agents at the time. Or you may be like, man, these guys don't know anything. I'm working on 20 agents. Like wherever you are in that cycle, you almost just have to take what you have and unravel it more and more. Start with the prompting, get your agents together, know how they should work. Then you can start figuring out how to apply with the code base. Okay, I got my agents working on this code base. And then you can start thinking about the larger architectural problems. Okay, how do we integrate agents into our day to day? How do we automate more things? How do we spin up all of these schedulers, that kind of stuff? And then going from different IDE to the other one, like you may be prompting in one while the other one is executing, unit testing in the third one, and then the fourth
Mhm.
one you're doing your ideation. Okay, I want to build this. So there is multiple work streams that
For sure.
you can have. And when they talk about teams being lean, it is that because now every developer has a team of developers.
Yep.
And I don't think software engineering is going away or anything like that. Like, we're the problem solvers. People come to you to solve a problem. And if you look at it from that lens, your agents minimize the work you shouldn't need to focus on too much, which is the code, the stuff that takes a long time. So you can save your mental capacity for the larger architectural decisions, the rollout plans, that kind of
Yep.
stuff. And then still, you can't just blindly trust. You have to validate stuff. But a lot of what I'm hearing are people feel lost because they've been married to the code. Their
Mm.
projects are their identity. How well they write this function with the least amount of code is why they feel they're the best. And now
Mm.
that's flipped. It's not even flipped, but it needs to be reassessed because
Yep.
the value isn't the code. The code is now the cheapest part.
Yeah.
You got to
100%.
focus on a lot of other aspects of software engineering that makes you that Swiss Army knife. So
100%. It's really we're having to put on our technical architect hat, our product manager hat. Even with developer tools, you have to have judgment on what's a common workflow people are going to use, what is actually user friendly, that kind of thing, what's going to help drive adoption and be useful. You still have to have a lot of that knowledge, even though you may not write the code for it, but you're writing the feature set.
yeah,
You're driving this thing. So, but that you bring up an interesting point, man, because I know, like, I've also seen a lot of engineers. I went through this myself, even. You had the identity as I'm a coder. I'm grinding out on the code all weekend. I came out with something nice or whatever. Like, what, like, how did you really handle that, just that transition and shift? Because it was just what, December before we got like, what is this, April now? This is like months, right? This isn't even a full year yet. So like, how did you handle that transition?
Yeah, man, things are definitely moving fast. If I take a step back from the ChatGPT communications to you manually writing the code back in, at this point, like 2023-ish, right? And then
Hmm.
2024 into 2025, like it was just new workflows, new ways of doing things, new models. And you're just like, man, I feel like I'm slower because I'm watching all of this stuff around me
Mm.
move faster.
Mm.
But you didn't want to hit the brakes and reassess because you could be stuck in your ways. Or at least I was a VS Code guy. Like that was it. Sure, cursor is cursor, but no, like VS Code's all I need. iTerm 2, like I don't need warp. Like all of this kind of stuff was there. And then once I started playing with it, I was like, okay, like this is
Hmm.
cool. This can be cool. I don't like this. I do like that. It's like you're the chef, right? Like you're
Hmm.
making the meal, you're doing the prepping. So a lot of it was me trialing and error what works. But as soon as I was able to take something to production in a record amount of time, when MCPs had came out, I was like, yo, like this is different. There's no going back to what I was doing before. And part of that was swallowing the pride. It was like the agent can do the coding. I need to focus on higher level work because there's a lot of this R&D. How do you integrate MCPs? Back then, there was fast MCP. Anthropic had just dropped their protocol. A developer created fast MCP on the Python landscape. Anthropic basically adopted that as their core MCP for Python and then forked that for JavaScript and all the other things. And that developer went on to just go create FastMCP 2 and 3. And I was like flipping back and forth, and I'm like, the Anthropic version actually sucks. I want to go back to MCP2. And I was like, there's no way I'm about to rewrite this. So I was like, I spent like a day and a half prompting, like giving it all this stuff, like, all right, let's refactor. And it was like, doop. And I was like, whoa, it worked on a one shot with a long prompt. And I was just like, yeah, there's no going back. Like refactoring,
Yeah,
it's just a prompt. Implementation is just a prompt.
hundred
And
percent.
at that point, I was just like going. Anytime new things are released now, so FastMCP 3 came out, I was able to just quickly upgrade that. I was using an app called LibreChat as well, which was it was one of the only MCP clients at the time, open source project, which actually got bought up, I think, but I think by ClickHouse. And that was another interesting application because that was fully React based, which that's my bread and butter, but it was a huge repository and I didn't need to focus on the UI. I just wanted the client. So
Yeah.
I was able to have an agent rip that out, apply my own patterns to it, add my own infrastructure to it. And after that, I was like, yeah, like this is where my focus is. It needs to be on the patterns of how we're going to scale these applications, move them through the stack, and less time spent on implementation details of the code. So yeah, I'm sold. I'm here. Now I'm 3, 4 agents. I have a nice pattern for my skills and the way that the agents are working with the repositories to not really have that much of a hiccup. The hardest part with these agents are they always say yes. So still, it's back to like, why would you
Sycophantic.
do it this way? And then you just got to take your own judgment. So there's definitely a level to it, though. If I didn't already know architecture, I think I would struggle with just taking its advice full sail, especially
Mm.
in a lot of the cloud patterns that it tries to throw at you. It's like, why? So that's where a lot of my time is spent now. But it also makes me feel like I'm in a new zone, a new way of
Mm.
working. But in the back of my mind, I know in the next 3 months that's going to change. So it's really important to be adaptable. That's just the biggest piece of advice I can give to
Hundred
engineers
percent.
at any level, man.
Hundred
And
percent. I went through that shit for myself, man. And I was actually on the wave. You probably saw a wave of people in December that over break, they were just messing with this AI stuff because they're using Opus was 4 or 5 at the time. And the first time I used it on I had used agent mode for a while, like within VS Code or whatever, but I actually was using the terminal. I used Claude Code. This was like my first time using it. And man, it was they were the way it was going because I had ideas that I always wanted to create, right? And I'm like, let me just see how fast it can roll this out because we're limited by time in that era. And I had an epiphany at some point. I was like, this thing codes better than I do. I still have the better judgment and taste from where I sit. But when it comes to the actual coding part, there's no misspelling of variable names that the spell checker catches, or there's no like little incidental things, and also the patterns. Like I might have went into it in a certain way, and it knows some of the more updated patterns, some more updated things that have come with different frameworks and whatever, and capabilities. And I'm like, man. And honestly, I had a moment, man. I was just like, I don't know, it's like someone came and took my job. I was like, but I love the code. I was anyone who knew me before this era, man. It was like I was always a coder, man. It was always like pristine and I took a lot of pride in the code, man. So to your point, I had to swallow the pride. I had to regroup and realize there are other things that are involved with software engineering that now are the core things that were always core things, but they were always infused in the code. So like your creativity, your judgment, your taste on how you do things in a modular fashion, even from your modular feature breakdown and all the different things, that's just entered into a new space and it's just not in the code base directly, but you can drive that same thing through the code base. Don't get all in the agent stuff as far as trying to control every single thing. You go crazy. It's too much output at one time for you to actually go through that to micromanage. But basically, I was able to drive those same principles and things to the agent, and so you become like you get a rhythm at some point. And that's where I took hold. I had to sit down and be like, man, I had to grieve it for a moment. I had to just grieve it. Luckily, it was over break, so I came back after break. Okay, we got these new tools. Where am I going to take it? I have to get good with this because just two different people who would have Google would get different results based on their savviness on how they can explore topics. Same thing is with AI and the prompting, the agents, and all that kind of stuff, man. So,
That's so
I
true.
mean,
Yeah.
I want to touch on something else that you said. You mentioned about how much this stuff is changing. You said in 3 months, which that's depressing to hear. But man, I'm glad we have agents in this era, though. You know what I mean, man? Because that 3 months that's not a long time. How are you keeping up with all the things, right? As far as I sent you a text yesterday on the routines by Anthropic drop, and there's all this other stuff around and workflow changes. Like, how are you adapting and handling all this fast pace of influx? One thing I'll say is Elon Musk said, I go to bed and there's an AI breakthrough, I wake up and there's an AI breakthrough. And he's not lying.
Uh,
So how are you handling this influx of just change and
Man,
delivery?
yeah, yeah. I feel very fortunate to have gone through a long career of software engineering from before DevOps was a thing, when everyone was
Mhm.
trying to go to monoliths, you barely
Oh
had
yeah.
cloud
Yeah.
compute, like you still
Mm-hmm.
had DBAs doing all this kind of stuff. And it's like,
DBAs.
yeah, like where we're at now, it's like two, three people are managing entire infrastructures for thousands plus
100%.
users. Like
100%.
it's insane. But I think the core of it is having good judgment and wisdom of what looks like it's gonna stick and what might not. I'll tell you what, with MCPs, I knew it was gonna stay here because the rapid iteration and development that the open source community applied to every single API on the web in literally a 2, 3 months span of time, you could find an MCP for everything. That's never
Yeah.
happened before. Like, how long did it
Protocol's not
take?
that old. It's not that old.
Right. Like, how long did it take a company to adopt APIs? And most, you walk into some companies and they're still on stored procedure databases. There's no access to their data at all. So to see MCPs roll out like that, I was like, okay, yeah, this is a game changer. This
Different.
is here to
It's
stay.
different. Yeah.
But one thing is, you can subscribe to our newsletter in the description, and we will give you guys what we think are the good topics. A lot of things that we weren't even able to cover in our allotted time, we share out to our community. So in the description, sign up, and you'll have access to that. But yeah, man, it's still a lot of blog reading, still a lot of social media skimming, and sometimes just turning it off because
Yes.
every breaking news thing isn't there the next week. It's going so fast that something that's mind
Oh
blowing
man,
isn't even talked about the week later.
it's crazy.
So yeah, you gotta keep eyes on everything, really watch the few things that you're excited about. And for me, it's focused on a lot of those development workflows,
Yeah.
products that are coming out that change the way we develop through automation. We're both
Hmm.
local first fans, things like that. From the computer engineering background too, a lot of the developments happening in the chips and the network stacks. We have more conversations to go, so make sure you subscribe.
Next
This
episode.
this AI realm is very deep.
Jeez.
But yeah, Ken, some parting words on your end too. How are you keeping
Yeah.
up with things and maybe close out on some of those new paradigm shifts from a developer identity perspective?
Yeah, for me, man, and I talk to a lot of people, and I really try to push folks into really recognize the importance of taking 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it is of the day to go explore. You know what I mean? You have to probably find that time depending on what your workload is. You might need to log on 30 minutes early or however you do it. But there's so much importance in doing that and experimenting. Like just getting your hands dirty on something, take something that you're really interested in, like a topic or a concept, and apply that to the technology that's coming out, right? If you're into gaming, go see how you can build a game with using some of the technology that's out there today. And I think what's important, even just having an agent drive it, driving the agent to build the game is going to teach you a lot. And I think just taking that time out during the day to just do the incremental progress, it adds up a lot over time. And then so that's one thing. But when the influx of information, I see all this hype and all this stuff, but like a lot of times, man, a lot of stuff talked about isn't even used in production. It isn't even being used.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So people are just blasting it out just for whatever reason because it's staying relevant. We won't even get to that. But I will say there's three things I kind of look out for as I have X up at the end of the day and I'm scrolling, I see certain stuff and I'll backlog it. I'll have a to-do sort of application that I'll say I'll take the idea or whatever the concept is, put the link in that I found it in or the docs or whatever, and I'll come back to it. I won't go in full gamut right away unless it's like super earth shattering, breaking, and I want to I'm nerding out, right? That way I watch out for that kind of fatigue of the influx. Because if you go again to these tech blogs, tech news, all this stuff, if you're plugged in and tapped in the right way, you're going to get so much information, it's going to be a little bit overwhelming. So I'll backlog and categorize, bookmark that stuff, right? And then I'll go back through it. And when I go back through it, I'm looking for three things. I'm like, one, is it just interesting? I like to just nerd out. So is this just something I just want to know about and just do just because? Because your passion, your interest will take you a long way.
Yep.
And then also second thing I look at that might be or is it relevant? Right. So it might be something that when you are reading this thing, your light bulb goes off like this. I could apply that to this project I'm working on, this side project. I could apply it to work, whatever the case may be with my personal life. How can I apply this to my life? If it's relevant, you can apply it to your life in any way. That's another avenue. Dig into that one. Also, there are certain things, like you just mentioned MCP, there are certain things that are just going to be where the industry's headed. If you're listening to this, you've never heard of agent to agent protocol. If you haven't built your own MCP server locally at least and just played around with it, seeing how your agent interacts with it, if you haven't gone through the gamut of those things, by all means, the industry's going this way. We're already here, actually. We're already here. So things that are going to be bleeding edge in the industry that are really relevant to the sector I'm in, I'm always looking at those things too. So those are the three things. Is it interesting or is it relevant or is it an industry standard that I'm going to have on my plate at some point in the future anyways?
Yeah.
So those are using my takeaways so that way. Because I mean, there's a lot of stuff I don't research. There's a lot of platforms, programs that I don't even dive into. And I might even have it backlogged at some point, but I'm still not doing the in-depth research. But just doing a quick skim on it, knowing about it, At some point, I might come back to say, hey, you know what? There's a tool that does this. And now it might become relevant to me now. So that's the things that I use, man. But I'll part with this. There's a lot of hype going on right now. There's a lot of just AI everywhere. People are now starting to figure out, like, oh crap, we got to actually have some ROI on this stuff. We got to actually put this stuff to good use. This is no longer a buzzword. We got to actually do this thing. And what I will say is, and you touched on this earlier, take your own stride, right? Don't try to be the guy that has 10 terminals up and just going after it on day one. Walk before you crawl. There's no harm in just going through a terminal or your IDE chat or whatever and working on things sequentially. There's nothing wrong with that. And to be honest, I was that guy for a long time until I found a rhythm. And then I found it was like, hey, I actually want to look this up at the same time. So now I'm in a different spot. Now I'm querying some things. You know, I'm going back to this thing. And oh, hey, I have 3 things I want to work on today. And I can do this simultaneously. Once I got my rhythm, I can start hopping into different workflows. But again, find what's best for you. You know what I mean? And don't feel the pressure. We need to normalize some of this stuff. On it. You don't have to do all this extra stuff with AI. You could do simple. I'm using AI to teach me a new tech concept for 30 minutes a day. There's a learning prompt. We might share this later. There's a learning prompt that you can put in there in any of your agent platforms, ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, whatever. And you can just say, hey, I want to learn about this topic. Ask me some questions. It can quiz you. It can break down analogies for you to help you better understand. And if you're just doing that 15 to 30 minutes out of the day, like that's fine too. That's more than enough if you want to get your feet wet in some topics. So I just encourage people, like, take your own stride, man. Don't fall into this hype of you got to be doing 10 terminals at once and cloud orchestrations and all the skills, blowing up your context windows, all the things. Don't, just take your time with it, roll into it, make sure it's fun, it's interesting, and then just take your time with it, man. That's my parting
Nope.
words on
Yeah,
that.
no, that ended on a high note. If you're rocking with us, guys, we're coming from a software engineering perspective. We're in this day to day, much like the audience will be. More than anything, subscribe, drop a comment. We want to hear what you guys are dealing with, what conversations you're having, because you need a community to keep moving forward in this AI realm. There's so much going on every single day. If you have a group of people, a group of friends, sit down together, have those conversations, talk through different ways of dealing with agents and whatnot. And then come join us. We're here sharing, dropping knowledge, sharing ideas, staying on top of it. So we'll leave all the links in the descriptions. We hope you guys all have a good day. And if you made it this far, thank you very much. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Later.